darkest hours, to show us how to live, to teach us how to give, to guide us with the light of love. When life held troubled times and had me down on my knees, there's always been someone to come along and comfort me. A kind word from a stranger to lend a helping hand, a phone call from a friend just to say I understand. And ain't it kind of funny that at the dark end of the road, someone lights a way with just a single ray of hope? Oh, I believe there are angels among us, sent down to us from somewhere up above. They come to you and me in our darkest hours, to show us how to live, to teach us how to give, to guide us with the light of love. There were so many faces shown up in the strangest places, to grace us with their mercies in our time of need. Oh, I believe there are angels among us, sent down to us from somewhere up above. They come to you and me in our darkest hours, to show us how to live, to teach us how to give, to guide us with the light of love, to guide us with the light of love.
The Brunner family has been very involved here at Burnsville High School. I had the privilege of meeting them, how many years ago? Quite a few years ago now. 5, yeah? And they've touched my heart as Joe has gotten older. And I'd like to introduce the father, Michael Brenner, and his family's gonna be doing the glow stick ceremony just shortly after that. So, Mike.
Can you hear me? Everybody here? It's a real honor for me to be here tonight. I was so honored when Becky asked me to talk about caregiving. It's something that's real near and dear to our heart. When I started this, I thought I'd look up what a caregiver meant, and even though I understand the concept of it, I thought, well, what does it really mean? And I found it wonderful. The first definition that popped up was a person who accepts responsibility for looking after a vulnerable neighbor. And nobody's more vulnerable, as we all know, than a cancer patient. And certainly, as the parent of a 5-year-old cancer patient, I know what that is. By the same token, there's nobody stronger than a cancer patient. I think you saw by that survivor lap and the people that were walking around that they're very, very strong. Okay, good. Many of you know our story, and I'll be very brief. Joe's sitting right there, so you know it has a happy ending. But 8 years ago, we were hit with a sledgehammer on a Friday afternoon at Children's Hospital in the ER when we were delivered the news that Joe had Burkitt's lymphoma, which is a very rare, aggressive cancer that affects 300 kids a year in the country. What's interesting about Burkitt's is that it basically the cells divide every 24 hours. So cancer, so it basically doubles every 24 hours. And the doctors told us that Joe had the cancer in his body probably a week and a half, and without treatment would live for 3 years. Well, that was 8 years ago. So a lot of good things have happened to us since then. You know, I've been called a lot of things in my life, and the one I'm most proud of is the fact of being called a survivor's parent. What's ironic about that label is there's probably nobody that had less to do with Joe being here healthy today than I did. Um, we had a wonderful group of network of people who stepped up to the plate and made sure that Joe got better. What I want to do today, in addition to the wonderful doctors and nurses of Children's Hospital and Southdale Peds, I want to highlight 5 people and groups of people that didn't know Joe and never touched Joe, but made a difference in the fact that he's here able to give me a hug right now. The first person I want to call out is a triage nurse at Southdale Peds. Her name was Vicki. Now Vicki hadn't met Joe, didn't know Joe, but I think that she sensed through the calls we made to to Southdale Peds that something was very, very wrong with Joe. She insisted that we get into Southdale Peds that day and see an alpha internist at Southdale Peds, Dr. Tim Anderson. I think a lot of you may know him, who sent us down to Children's. We were scanned, and about 6 hours later, Joe was in ICU at Children's Hospital. So Vicki is a person that, had no knowledge of Joe, hadn't touched Joe, hadn't seen Joe, but sensed that we were a neighbor who was vulnerable and helped us. The second is a couple that came and saw Laura and I think it was Joe's second night in Children's Hospital. We were up on the 8th floor, still kind of in shock about what we were facing. Again, at the time we didn't know whether Joe would survive or not. And the couple walked into our room and asked Laura and I if they could talk to us. And then, I say they're elderly, they're probably about as old as Laura and I are now. But and they proceeded to tell us that their daughter had been diagnosed with leukemia 17 years earlier. And we had a great conversation. At the end, we asked them on the way out the door, we said, well, how's your daughter doing? And they said, she's a nurse on the 5th or 6th floor right now, 2 floors below us. So at that point, that was the first time I really thought, maybe we'll beat this. Maybe we'll beat this disease, this horrible disease, and get Joe out of here healthy. At the time, we really didn't know. The third group I want to talk about is the Burkitt's researchers. Somewhere in the world is a team or a set of doctors or researchers that unlocked the lock that allowed Joe to live. If Joe's older brother Chris, who's now at UMD, would have been diagnosed with Burkitt's lymphoma when he was 5 years old, Chris wouldn't be here today. But somewhere there's a set of researchers, a doctor, and I'm determined the next year to find that man or woman or that team of people and thank them personally for what they gave us. Again, we wouldn't have had Joe here today if it wasn't for their dedication and work. The fourth is a group I want to talk about just very quickly is the Caring Bridge visitors. Joe had over 293,000 people visit his Caring Bridge site over the course of a year or so. And each time somebody came on that or I saw that somebody looked in on Joe, who left a note, who said a prayer, who sent us a hug virtually or online, that made a big difference to all of us, and it kept us pushing through. It kept us pushing through. It kept us pushing through until Joe was free of cancer. And the last group, because it really fits the definition of what a caregiver is, somebody who looks after a vulnerable neighbor, is all of you today. Because you're here, you're not necessarily doing it for Joe or for me or for anybody that has had cancer in the past, but you're doing it for the people who will be diagnosed next week, next month, next year and don't even know it. Just in the case of Children's Hospital, we know that 2 children a week walk in there. So that somewhere there's 2 families right now who are probably going through a normal week who don't know that they'll be in there next week and they need help. They need to be in the same situation I am next year. Everybody's got to have heroes, and the caregivers of cancer patients are my hero. On behalf of our family, I just want to say I'm grateful for all you do, and we appreciate everything you do. And I know I speak on behalf of all the other patients and survivors. I mean, when you look at that slideshow, it's just very powerful. And as our MC said, that's a separate life. That's important. So, on behalf of our family, I just want to say thank you to all the caregivers. Thank you. Have all the glow sticks been handed out? Okay. Now, when you're prompted, if you fit a certain audience group, then you'll be instructed to light your glow stick. So you just follow along as the kids read it, and if it applies to you, please go ahead and light your glow stick.
If you are honoring or remembering your father or mother, please light your glow stick now.
If you are honoring or remembering a brother or sister, please light your glow stick now. If you are honoring or remembering a husband, wife, or partner, please light your glow stick now.
If you are honoring or remembering your son or daughter, please light your glow stick now.
If you are honoring or remembering a grandparent, aunt, uncle, cousin, or other relative, please light your glow stick now.
If you are honoring or remembering a friend, neighbor, or community member, please light your glow stick now.
If you are here as a survivor, if you have had cancer or are currently fighting this disease, we celebrate you and ask you to please light your glow stick now.
If you are a caregiver, we appreciate you and admire you. We thank you for your devotion and strength and ask you to light your glow stick now.
If you are fortunate enough not to know anyone afflicted with cancer, please light your glow stick now and let us honor you and your selflessness in joining our fight.
Tonight we honor, celebrate, and remember those for whom we have lit glow sticks. For those whose lives we celebrate and share. We will continue this fight for you. For those whose memory we honor, you were and always will be a part of us. Though we do not see you, we know you are with us.
Look around at these points of light. Never forget the lives that are represented here. At this time, we would like to call for a moment of silence to honor our dear loved ones, living and lost.
We would like you to very quietly come down to the track. We want you to keep in mind what this is all about and why we're doing this. We do not want talking. We want you to be thinking about the ones who are not here with us right now, whether they're still fighting their battles or if they're moved on to a better place. I invite you to come down and line up on the track, and Jerry Brennan, our bagpiper, will be leading us in a silent lap. Please, no talking.